Can we trust Matt Hancock? Welcome to Mark and Pete. Here's a thought.
If you break the sacred bonds of trust and divulge confidential things discussed, where the links of honesty are sadly bust, you'll lose connection with what's unjust. Well, it appears that Matt Hancock and Isabel Oakeshott have come to loggerheads. Yes, this is a tale of Scoop's betrayal and indeed WhatsApp. Now, many of you have been following this, and according to Matt Hancock, he has seen that his former ghostwriter, this is the famous journalist Isabel Oakeshott, has broken trust by also breaking confidentiality agreements. Now, the real scandal behind this is that Isabel actually wrote a number of his diaries. This is around the pandemic diaries that were recently published by Mr. Hancock and his publisher. Now, he handed over 100,000 WhatsApp messages between himself, other ministers, aides, and public health advisors. Well, Isabel has already broken trust as far as he is concerned. And that means that you have to say, well, has she done things in the interest of the public? Has Matt Hancock himself been guilty of breaking trust with the public for some of his actions during the pandemic? Clergyman Pete, I ask you, who has really broken trust in this case?
Well, I think that there is fault on both sides. I think that there's a difference, though, as to who the trust has been broken with. I mean, Isabel Oakeshott has certainly broken trust in that she was provided these WhatsApp messages to help with the writing of those diaries. And you could say, well, don't have ghostwriters, write the thing yourself.
Yes.
But she certainly betrayed the trust because she would have promised not to reveal them. And Matt Hancock has said as much. She hasn't denied it. But of course, you could say that Matt Hancock, on several levels, has broken trust. I mean, it's my view that having an unacknowledged ghostwriter is already a deception and a lack of trust, because people assume that you've written the thing yourself. So I think that's a lack of trust. And I know the politicians are used to having their speeches written by other people, but I think that's a different thing when it's your diary, as in this case.
Yeah.
But the second thing is about trust is, of course, Matt Hancock was putting into place policies that he didn't keep himself and is still trying to squirm and worm his way out of them. For example, by saying when he broke the rules to do with the COVID lockdowns, he said, they were guidelines and not law, therefore I didn't break the law. As if that's the point at issue. The point at issue was he wasn't doing what he was telling everyone else to do. That's the breaking trust. So Isabel Oakeshott broken trust with Matt Hancock. He has broken trust with us.
Yeah.
And I think that if you look at it in that way, you see, well, Isabel Oakeshott is therefore being trustworthy to us, the general public.
Oh dear.
Because she's revealing the truth about Matt Hancock's lies and deception.
A long chain, a tale of betrayal. Well, it seems that Miss Oakeshott, who writes for many publications, particularly The Telegraph, put out a statement saying no apology for acting in the national interest. The worst betrayal of all would be to cover up these truths. Now, she added that the greatest betrayal was to the entire country and to children in particular, who paid a terrible price as a result of the response to the pandemic and the repeated unnecessary lockdowns. Now, according to Mr. Hancock, he has termed the Telegraph stories as a partial biased account to suit an anti-lockdown agenda. I think the point here, Clergyman Pete, isn't it, that in my opinion, both are guilty, as you've highlighted. I think that what is important, and if I take the greatest picture here, is the greater good, isn't it? What is the greater good? In this particular case, I can understand that Isabel, the journalist, has taken the view that actually the public needs to know what went wrong and more importantly, where perhaps some major decisions affected not just individuals, but an entire nation. So accepting, although I don't think she's admitted it, but I can see that she has broken terms, i.e. broken trust of her terms that she signed. She's looked at the greater good. Now, I suppose really this opens up a wider picture, isn't it? Which is, when do you actually need to break trust? Now, we see this in religion, and we see this in business, where in confidence you might have signed a confidentiality agreement or a non-disclosure agreement. But actually, this is where, as we've seen, that actually it can either backfire on the individual, the whistleblower, or it could certainly really break trust, perhaps with parishioners or something like that. I just wanted to ask you, where do you think it becomes good to break a contract or even somebody's personal trust?
Well, I think that there are hierarchies of good. I think that you can say that something achieves more good than something else. You could, it's in different areas of life. I mean, for example, it is wrong to kill, but if someone were about to, I don't know, kill a child, wouldn't you kill them to stop it? It becomes more important to kill them.
Yeah.
So something that's wrong becomes right, and the situations can change like that. I mean, in the Bible it says do not kill, but in context it's quite clearly, it's usually translated like this: do not murder. That is an unjustifiable killing.
Yeah.
And in the same section of the Bible, which is the Ten Commandments, it says, do not bear false witness against your neighbor. Now, if we just use that, the commandment, to analyze what Isabel Oakeshott has done, and then we can apply it to others. Well, she was bearing false witness to her neighbor when she wasn't releasing the WhatsApp messages.
Yeah.
And so you could argue, oh no, she's now done the right thing. Now let's put that in a different situation. You've signed a non-disclosure agreement, but you realise that people need to know this. Maybe it's something poisonous in food. Just one example, or the way a medical treatment was tested before it was used. Well, in those cases, I think you need to break the contract, and you need to speak out.
Well, I would agree.
But there are, of course, consequences.
Exactly. Here's my take on this, and I agree with the fact that if you sign, let's say, for example, you're an engineer, let's put a different example, and you discover that even though you may have signed a non-disclosure agreement on a product, and you know that that product going out into the market is probably going to cause harm or is ineffective, you would possibly take the view that actually, for the greater good, it would be better to break terms and warn people, expose the issue. But in this case, where we go back to the Oakeshott situation, she has gained. And what I mean by that is that although that she has said she's done it for the greater good, she's also gaining from it, not just for her own publicity, but she's also been paid for the story as well. Ironically, a double standard there. Well, so this is where I have the balance on trust, which is absolutely if it's for the greater good, but if the greater good is for personal gain, that can't be good, surely. And that's what's happened, I think in this case.
Yes, I think what we're seeing here, I mean, both of our comments earlier on which was whether she was right to release these messages were based on the events as she described them.
Yeah,
but
why publish it now? I mean, she
did say something else. No, but she's obviously had
a
falling out, and she also said that what turned her against him was his appearance on "I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here."
I had to wait for that one. Okay,
but that's not relevant.
No.
To whether it's right or not. And what I would say, when I was talking about them being releasing it, breaking her agreement with him, there was another way of doing it. She didn't need to have it as a major story that she paid for. She could have said, well, I'm against the lockdowns and Matt Hancock's treatment in them, and tried to bring a court case against him, sued him for his treatment of for his unlawful activity, and brought a civil case against him. And she could have done it in a different way, I'm saying, which would not have benefited her, but would actually have been, if she'd been successful, binding against Matt Hancock. It would probably have had a bigger effect than a news story, which will be forgotten, but wouldn't have benefited her financially. So I think that we can see that there are mixed motives. And so I do understand him seeing it as a betrayal.
Well, he says also on this point, it's incredibly disingenuous and misleading to say she hasn't been paid for the book, which she has. She has and will also receive royalties. So there again, you see, is where do you put the victim in this place? I mean, I have to say, I think sadly they're both equally as guilty.
And, just staying with Isabel Oakeshott just for a moment, she is in a relationship with Richard Tice. She's in a civil partnership with him, in fact. Now, Richard Tice is the leader of Reform UK.
Yeah.
And so you could see Richard Tice as a political rival to Matt Hancock in a way. And so there's then another motive behind getting Matt Hancock, and by extension the rest of the Conservative government, as being tarnished, as being deceptive, because then that means, we need a change. We don't trust Labour either because it's about lockdowns, and they wanted to lock down harder and earlier, so they're not really in opposition. It benefits Richard Tice's party. So again, we have another issue there as to whether we could trust Isabel Oakeshott's motives.
Well, that was going to be my point now, which is just to sort of conclude this, which is whether you look at Matt Hancock, I know that you love doing that, or whether you look at Isabel Oakeshott, I think what we should do is ask our listeners, do we trust these people again? Is there ever any retribution? Is there something where maybe that their comeuppance in other ways, or maybe there is forgiveness here? I mean, what do you think, Clayton Pete? Let's ask our lovely listeners, what do they think about this saga?
I think, well, just quickly, I think there's always room for forgiveness, but forgiveness doesn't necessarily extend to a self-flagellation. We don't want them to do it to us again. So that's forgiveness, as in you could say, well, we forgive you, but we're still not going to trust you. Make sure you subscribed by going to markandpete.com. Leave a comment under this and, in fact, every episode.
And we trust that you will revisit next time.